So that's another question, if there's actually discussions going on between the judiciary and what we'll call members of the establishment. Because I had kind of a similar experience myself, and I'm sure you know the person I'm about to mention. But I was at one point, people think now that I just do YouTube shows and stuff. I used to be very politically involved, trying to pressure, and I got involved with school boards and trying to talk to MLAs, and we've sent out information packages to MPs all across Canada. And in the process of that, I ended up getting an appointment with the Speaker of the House, Darryl Plecas. And so I went to his office, and I had probably a good 45-minute discussion with him. And that was sort of during the early phase of my calling for provincial and national inquiries into the transitioning of vulnerable children. And so basically I got an appointment with him to discuss this and to say, listen, this is a serious issue. I'm not saying change the law. I'm saying we need to have an inquiry into whether or not the law should be changed. And this is something that's worthy to be put on the floor. And we need an MLA or somebody to bring this to the floor of the legislature. So I had a 45-minute discussion with him where I laid it all out. And by the end of that discussion, he was like almost jaw dropped. He was like, wow, yeah, this is it's quite clear that what you're talking about, this needs to be investigated, because I had brought up the stuff about, we don't know the actual numbers, but huge percentages, a disproportionate percentage of foster children are identifying as transgender. And as a former foster child myself, of course, this is very a personal thing to me. And so I gave him all of these startling numbers and, autism rates for transgender kids, and, the fact that so many of these kids have psychological and emotional problems. And I laid it all out for him, gave him all the numbers. And at the end, like I say, jaw dropped. He was saying, yeah, this definitely needs to go to the legislature. On the speaker. I can't really put it to the floor myself, but I can sort of put you into connection with the people who will do that. And he had said to me, like in no uncertain terms, he had said to me that your initiative to get an inquiry into what is happening will not fail. This will happen. This is what he told me. Okay. And so by the time I got done that meeting, and people should know that Darryl Plecas is the Speaker of the House in the BC legislature, right? So I was feeling pretty good. It's going, all right, finally, we got some motion.
He's got friends in all those places that could have achieved that. Yeah.
Right. So I went away thinking, all right, we're going to get this ball in motion, and maybe we'll get this inquiry. The next big thing will be to keep the inquiry clean itself, because I know the UK has an inquiry, and when the UK launched their inquiry, when I first looked at it, the first thing I noticed was the person they had appointed as the head of the inquiry had all kinds of ties to the pharmaceutical industry. And I was like, okay, what are you guys doing? So that, but I'm aware of that. So if we get an inquiry here at some point, I'll be all over that like a hawk from the initial stages, if we can get it. But what happened was that a couple of days after I talked to him, he contacted me and said, well, I know I had told you that you weren't going to fail, but I had a discussion with somebody, and all I can really say is that I don't really feel that your case has any merit, and we're not going to be able to follow through on this. And that's about all I have to say. And it was done. So 2 days later, he'd gone off and he talked to somebody from basically saying I would not fail, and this would make it to the floor of the legislature. Just complete 180. And suddenly, no, this isn't going anywhere. Everything you said is, invalid, and there's no more to say about it. So that's that whole thing about talking to people behind the scenes, and are those kinds of discussions going on between the judiciary and people in power? If they are,
where the problem with the judiciary, this is what we do know, Jen, is that there are so many meetings for lawyers prior to becoming judges on these things. I mean, you've got like West Coast Leaf, right? The radical feminist organization that's very pro-trans. And one of those judges, as lawyers, they go through all these, community meetings where they get indoctrinated with this insanity. Then they're appointed to preside over cases because they know about these issues. As in the case involving the father. But more than that, judges training. I have a copy of minutes from the provincial court when Barbara Finley wanted a meeting with them to further, and talk about homosexual rights, right?
Right.
So, some of this information comes and, we'll do an expose on it, who's whispering in the king's ear, right, on these issues. And anybody with any common sense has to start listening to the facts on this.
Right. Well, on that note, something else. So into these sort of secret meetings and stuff. So federal lobbying by pharmaceutical companies in Ottawa, there's been a significant change here. Okay, so there is an office that monitors this. It's called the Office of the Commissioner for Lobbying of Canada. Right. And they keep track of the number of meetings taking place between pharmaceutical executives and government. And what we can see here is between 2008 and 2018, that went way up. So from 15 in 2008 to 104 meetings in 2018, and maybe more now. And is it just a coincidence that in that same time frame we see all of this massive these massive projects really that are benefiting the pharmaceutical industry, whether we're talking about the transgender agenda or now talking about universal vaccination, right? Is it just a coincidence that these meetings have been going through the roof? And that's the other thing there is there's something rotten going on where we need to sort of we need to purge this type of stuff and set up systems where this can't happen anymore.
So last year on this subject, and those are the meetings that we know about, okay?
Right.
I'll talk about the provincial meetings here soon. But last year I got a call from one of the high-ups within the Federal Conservative Party of Canada, outraged over a convention or a large meeting that had over 100 tables. Each table was sponsored by a pharmaceutical company. This is the federal conservatives, right? And at their convention, each table was funded and people invited as a result of their sponsorship of this thing. So, that's the entrenchment that we're getting on the political infiltration.